Welcome to the farm. Farm weddings have been growing in popularity, and we're planning on having one here today. But first, I'm going to go gather some sustainable flowers in East Troy, Wisconsin, and then it's off to pick up hickory nuts for a wedding cake. Gather with us around the farm table. I'm your host, Inga Witcher.
Gather with us around the farm table.
A few years ago, I moved up to Wisconsin. I started an organic dairy farm at St. Isidore's Mead. That's when I discovered the abundance of Midwestern local food and small-scale farmers, growing everything from green zebra tomatoes to pasture pork. I'm taking a break from the cows, hitting the road, and seeing if I can't satisfy my epicurious appetite.
Oh.
That's great. This is amazing.
Around the Farm Table is funded in part by Wisconsin Farmers Union, Heartland Credit Union, and Friends of Wisconsin Public Television.
Now that the chickens are fed, let's head back into the barn and meet with Dr. Detloff to find out about how to read a cow's coat. Dr. Paul, it's so exciting to have you at my farm. About 10 years ago, I took one of your classes at the Moses Conference, and it was the Organic University, and you talked a little bit about the hair coats and things like that, and I've been trying to get you out to the farm to look at my cows ever since then. So I'm hoping we can just go through and just tell me a little bit about your experience.
The hair coats is a complete lost art in the U.S. It was developed in Germany in the 1870s and 80s. I put on an organic vet school starting 20 years ago. At that point, I would go into these 50 cow herds and I could predict what was happening. And it was like, wow. With the DHIA records, I was amazed myself that, hey, I can pick out the 3 cows in the herd with the high protein.
So Dr. Paul, when you're looking at the cows, how do you determine from the hair coat?
Well, we can go through that. And the first thing I would do is I'd look at the hair coat. Mm-hmm. And the hair coat should have a shine, nice shed out. Your 4 cows we have here have excellent hair coats.
Oh, good.
And that's a sign of mineralization of the farm.
Okay.
And you have to have some pretty good grass on this farm to get this hair coat. And I think you told me that you are a kelp user also.
Yes.
Kelp is full of trace elements, and that feeds the whole endocrine system for a healthy cow. More things you can look at are, this girl here shows it. She's got a dark line all the way from here. See how darker this is?
Yeah.
That means this girl has got a lot of macro minerals, calcium, phosphorus, magnesium, potassium. The shine on her coat means she's got trace elements. Cobalt, zinc, manganese, copper. And this comes from grass and hay and kelp. I have never seen anything that has done as much good for the health of the organic cow as kelp. Mm-hmm. 2 ounces of kelp or free choicing it, and it fills up their system with trace elements, and that runs the endocrine system. Do you know what trace element in kelp is really a key for reproduction? Manganese, Mn, manganese. Kelp is very high in manganese and iodine. Therefore, when we put cows on kelp, we're giving them plenty of manganese, and we're going to have some really good first service conception and reproduction.
That is so interesting.
For every $1 you spend on kelp, you're going to save $2 in veterinary supplies. It just happens. And so I really like, that's my last commercial, I guess. And I don't sell kelp. I recommend it. And that's kind of become a standard paradigm. And the first thing that happens when somebody starts or comes to us, we say, get your girls on kelp and start working on your soil. So this girl here is really well mineralized, even though she's not fat as a pig. Mm-hmm. Our organic cows are going to tend to run a little thinner.
Okay.
And we're not being inhumane. They're not starving. They're not wanting for anything, or you wouldn't have a hair coat like this. When you look at a cow in the front, there's a cowlick in her forehead. Mm-hmm. And you draw a line between her eyes. The lower that cowlick is, the gentler she'll be.
Oh, no kidding.
The higher it is, the more high-strung she'll be. If you look at them from the front with the sun, it'll be from a handful to bigger. That's called the thymic swirl. That means her endocrine system is really, really working, in that she's going to breed and she's healthy. She's highly mineralized.
So you can tell by the swirl if the cow's pregnant?
Yes.
Wow.
Yep. It's difficult to read, like on these girls here with short hair.
Yeah.
Where it's easy to read is like on Hereford beef cattle.
Okay.
I had a 120 cow Hereford beef herd that I would pregnancy check every fall, and they were kind of longish hair, and it just stood out.
Wow.
That's the swirl for pregnancy down underneath here. That grass makes them so healthy that we don't want them to be roly-poly fat. Mm-hmm. If you want to have a problem, feed your heifers corn silage and get them fat as a pig, and you'll have a vet out for every one of them.
Yeah. Dr. Paul, thank you so much for coming out here, and I'm never going to look at a cow the same again.
Yeah. My pleasure. I love passing on knowledge. That's what I'm all about at this stage in my life.
Well, I'm going to get the cows out and get changed, and then why don't you meet me over in East Troy, where we can learn about how to grow flowers sustainably. Emily, thank you for letting me come visit you.
Hi, thanks for coming. Thank you.
So tell me a little bit about your flower farm here.
This is my grandpa's farm. He's owned it for over 50 years, and about 8 or 9 years ago, I decided I wanted to start a flower farm. So he gave me this little half acre, and it's turned into this. Yeah.
It must be exciting for him to see another generation continuing on farming too.
You know, I think it is. I think he was a little bit confused by what I was doing for a while, but I think he really likes it.
So tell me about sustainable flower growing, and how is that different than flowers we'd see in the grocery store, the conventional flowers?
Sure. Most flowers that you buy in the grocery store come from South America, and they're not necessarily grown with sustainable growing practices or sustainable labor practices, and they're all sort of bred to travel. They aren't necessarily bred to smell good or be the prettiest flowers. So what I grow is just whatever is pretty.
Yeah, I like that. I like that philosophy. And I also like it because I wanted to use some of these flowers on a cake later on, and so I don't have to worry about sort of any chemicals or anything like that getting in the cake. That's nice.
Yep, it's really nice. I put a lot of flowers on cakes.
So when you're growing flowers, are you having to think about the soil as much as we are with our dairy or our growing pasture and things like that? It's probably at the top of your mind too.
Yeah, the soil is important. Just the structure of it, I mean, the way that it holds water and nutrients. We like to add compost every year. It helps for a lot of things.
Yeah, absolutely. So when you're growing here in Wisconsin, do you have to think about different varieties, something to get through the wintertime, or how do you choose the flowers that you're growing?
That's actually a really good question. I grow a lot of perennials, so they need to be hardy to here. We're about zone 5, sometimes zone 6, so I take some risks sometimes. But otherwise, there are plants, the stuff that I plant early in the spring are a lot of annuals that can withstand just a little bit of a frost, and then they'll come up and bloom. There are things that won't withstand a frost at all, so I really wait until after the 1st of May to put those out, and then just cross my fingers that we don't get a late frost.
Now, when I picture you out here on your farm, I just picture like perfect weather, like a little bird kind of chirping on your shoulder, and it just being the most idyllic place to work. Am I correct in thinking that?
Sometimes it's like that. Sometimes it's really, really hot and miserable, and there are spiders dangling from my hat.
Okay, just help me out here. When you're picking the flowers, what stage should we be picking flowers at? Is it when they're in full bloom?
Not most of the time. All flowers are a little bit different. But I think a good rule of thumb is when they're about half or a third of the way open is a good time to pick them, because then they'll still, when you bring them in, they'll still open in the vase and they'll be beautiful.
Okay.
Most flowers last about a week.
Really?
Yep.
My flowers don't last that long, so I'm doing something wrong.
And not all flowers are meant to be picked, but the ones that you can pick usually last about a week.
Do you see a growing trend with brides wanting to use that sustainable flowers and the more natural look?
You know, I do. A lot of them are worried about the environmental implications, and they want something that's more natural. They don't like to waste as much, I think, a lot of the younger people. But some of them just really like that look.
Well, I love this natural look that you have here. I mean, I love the greens too, these different, like this. What is that? I love it.
These are northern sea oats.
That's so pretty.
I just love them. And they turn a beautiful shade of brown, so they're pretty for months.
It's something so unexpected, and there's hops in here too.
The hops are also great. These, especially because I do so many weddings in Milwaukee, people have a lot of beer-themed weddings, and they're great. I love them.
I love this. I think it's so, I guess I want to say untraditional, but I feel like it's probably more traditional to like our grandmother's era of having these beautiful, more natural looking flowers.
Yeah, I think so. A lot of times people will pick up a bouquet and they'll have memories of their grandma. They'll say, oh, my grandma used to grow sweet peas, or my grandma used to grow marigolds.
I love that. Well, I was hoping to gather some flowers. I'm making a wedding cake this afternoon. I thought it would be very beautiful. So do you mind if we pick some for that?
Nope, that'll be great.
Okay, well, I'm going to pick some more with Emily, and then why don't you meet me over in Princeton, Wisconsin, where we'll pick up some hickory nuts for the perfect wedding cake. Hey, Mike. So Mike, you're the president of the Wisconsin Hickory Association, is that correct?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
So tell me, what is it? I want to know everything I can find out about hickories.
Oh, how much time do you have? You'll be here all day. Well, the Hickory Association was founded by a group of individuals that recognize this great natural resource that we have here in Wisconsin. We've explored the history of hickory. It goes back at least 8,000 years with Native Americans. And then the explorers who came to this country learned about the use from the Native Americans. And we have some writing from Hernando de Soto back in 1539 in Georgia about the Native Americans using hickory there.
Wow. Now, what are all the uses of hickory?
Most people today know hickory for barbecue sauce, right? But there's also hickory cabinets and flooring that we have. But we've explored different areas of hickory use now, like a hickory syrup. We have hickory nut oil, hickory fudge, hickory smoked coffee. So there's a great variety of things that we can do with hickory.
It seems like it's a nice perennial crop to be able to harvest nuts from. Is there anything happening here in Wisconsin to get it to become more of an industry?
Well, that's what the Hickory Association has been working on. We just were announced to receive a grant from the USDA. It's a crop feasibility study that we're going to do on hickory in Wisconsin, and it comes from the Specialty Crop Block Grant from the USDA.
That's fantastic. Well, I started eating hickory nuts a few years ago. I just love them. I make a hickory nut tart that I just love. I love just grabbing them out of a bag and just eating them. The flavor is really wonderful, don't you think?
Yes, it's a great nut, and most people don't realize that a pecan is a hickory.
Oh, is it?
But to the Native Americans, they favored the hickory over the pecan because it's a sweeter nut, but it's much, much harder to crack.
Sure.
And that's why you don't see hickory nuts in the store right now. They're still shelled by hand even today.
When's the right time to harvest the hickory nuts?
Well, we're coming up on it pretty soon. If you look at the nuts that we have in the tree here, we're about a month away. The seams on the nut, and there are 4 seams, they become concave and kind of bulging. And then in about late September, early October is when they'll start to crack open. These nuts are from last year.
And they look like they're pretty hard.
They are. They're
nut to
very,
crack.
very hard. You have to dry the nut after you harvest them and cure them, and that makes the wood on the nut really seal in the freshness. It's a great natural container.
Probably the Native Americans loved it because they could just keep it for an extended period of time.
Absolutely. It was one of the few foods that came in its own packaging. There's explorers journaling about the Native Americans storing them in baskets underground for up to 2 years.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, I'm planning on making a hickory nut cake this afternoon, and I love the flavor. I think it's fun. I live up near Eau Claire, and I never see the shagbark hickories up there as much. I mean, maybe I'm just not exploring enough up there too.
Well, it's not as common. Hickory, if you think of a map of the United States, it's mostly in the southeastern part of the United States, away from the Gulf Coast, up the Mississippi River states, about halfway to the west across those states. And Wisconsin is way up in the northwest corner of distribution and about halfway across our state.
So for folks that are in areas where there's not a hickory tree in their backyard, where can they find hickory nuts to be able to experiment with?
Well, they certainly could come down here to Green Lake County. We have a lot of hickory trees in our area, in our regular forests, and our public parks here. And the southern half of the state, any place where there's a thick woodlands, generally you'll find some hickory trees, maybe about a third would be hickory trees at the most, unless, of course, there was a Native American encampment in the area, because Native Americans actively propagated these trees, and there are some trees still standing that are nearly 300 years old.
Wow.
That are likely to have been propagated by the Native Americans.
That's so exciting to be able to be a part of that history standing here now.
It's amazing.
Well, I'm going to see if I can't get some hickory nuts off of Mike, and then why don't you meet me in the kitchen and we'll turn them into a delicious hickory nut cake. Back home in Washington State, my grandmother was known for a lot of things. She was a farm wife, she milked cows by hand, and she baked all the time. One of her favorite things to do was bake wedding cakes for people in the community. And so I thought I would bring a little bit of my grandmother's spirit into the day today by making the wedding cake. And what a perfect way to showcase these amazing hickory nuts that we have growing here in Wisconsin. The first thing that we're going to do is separate out the egg whites and the egg yolks. Now, when you separate eggs, it's nice to have a really cold egg. That way the yolk can separate easier from the whites. But when you're baking, as you know, you want to have everything room temperature. So I'm going to take my chances today with room temperature eggs. One thing I do like to have is an extra dish to crack my egg into. That way if I mess up, I can just toss that away and I'm not incorporating it into the rest of the eggs. Okay. Wish me luck here. When I was a kid, this was one of my jobs that my grandmother would have me do when she was baking. I still haven't mastered it after all these years. All right. Oops. And we'll start on the batter. All right, so I've got the butter that I'm going to add here. And now you just whip that butter up until it's nice and creamy. And now I can add in 2 cups of sugar to the butter. And now once the butter and the sugar have creamed together, then you can add your eggs. And look at that color. And a little bit of vanilla. Okay, look at the color. I love the summertime egg yolks. They always just make everything so beautiful. Okay. Now mix up here. I think having these homemade touches like a homemade wedding cake is a nice way to just, you know, keep it on the cheap. Okay, so now it's time to add the flour and the milk mixture. And when you're making a cake, you know, you just add a little bit of flour, a little bit of milk. And I've heard from several people that when you're doing the back and forth, you want to start and you want to end on the flour. So I'll just put on a little bit of flour and I'm going to mix it by hand. Whoops. Try to keep some of the flour in the pan. You know what? I'm going to use my beaters for this too. Just make it easy on myself. Then a little bit of buttermilk. A little bit more flour. So I'm going to add the rest of the buttermilk. And then finish up with the flour. Okay. When you're cooking, you can put in those nice good intentions into what you're doing. One thing I've learned from Dr. Detloff is when you're treating an animal, you want to give that animal good intentions and positive feelings. It's the same when you're cooking. You want to give that recipe good intentions and positive feelings. Now, the hickory nuts, the star ingredient, I'll just sprinkle those in. The hickory nuts just give it a beautiful nutty flavor, and it's a little bit of a surprise for a cake to add the hickory nuts to it. Oh, it smells good already with the hickory nuts, yum. I'm gonna set this off to the side and then get my beaters clean, because the next thing we're gonna do is whip up some egg whites. Egg whites are gonna add a little bit of a lighter texture when they get whipped up, which is nice for a cake. Okay, see now they can, when the peaks form like that, that's when you know they're good to go. So now we're just gonna simply fold in about 1/4 of this mixture. And this is where you wanna be careful. You don't wanna over incorporate or else you lose that lightness. Okay, boy, I'm messy baking today. I guess that's part of it. Fold these in. Okay. And I'll get the rest of them in here. I like using eggs from the farm too. It's a little bit of the farm in the cake. Okay, and now we can just add them right to our pans. I've got 3 cake pans. And what I've done so far is I've buttered them, and then I put a piece of parchment on the bottoms of each, and then put a little flour in. So there's sure not gonna stick to anything today, hopefully. And divide it out among the 3 here. There we go. I think this looks nice and even-ish. Maybe. And what I like to do is just hit that cake on the counter to get it to go through the pan. There we go. It takes out a lot of your frustration and stress at the same time. Now I can just pop these in at 350. When they come out, we'll let them cool, and then we'll get started on the frosting. Cream cheese frosting is a classic, and I think it will pair wonderfully with the hickory nut cake. So let's get started. It's a very simple recipe. I'm gonna put 8 ounces of cream cheese in here and get it whipped up a little bit. And again, you wanna have all your ingredients at room temperature. That way they can come together nicely and it's a nice texture. Get some butter in there. Some vanilla for flavor. And now I'm gonna slowly add some powdered sugar. It's gonna get messy. And a little bit of milk to thin it out. We want to be able to spread nicely on the cake. Well, I'm gonna lick the beaters and get this all cleaned up, and then we can start on the fun part, which is decorating the cake. One thing I've learned when frosting cakes is to put a little bit of the frosting down on the bottom, and that'll kind of hold that cake in place. So when you're walking it out to where you need to set it at, it's not gonna wobble as much. Okay. Okay, so now got my fun cake tools here. I'll just put a dollop in the middle and just spread that out. If you wanted to, you could put jam inside the layers too, some homemade jam. My parents, when they got married, they had to, my family was dairy farmers, so they had to get married in between the morning and the evening milking. And that's true for a lot of folks. I know when people get married in the area, sometimes milking times have to be switched in order to get to the church on time. And it's just a reality of being in a farm life. Just because there's a wedding doesn't mean the cows don't need to be milked. And I don't want to overfill the inside because sometimes it just gets to be too much. I'm going to turn this on top. I'm going to turn the top one upside down just to give me a smoother top to when I start decorating. I'm getting excited for this cake. Now I can start loading up with the frosting and smoothing it out. My worst fear is that I'm going to have crumbs coming out into the frosting, but I've thought ahead and I've decided that I'm going to put some hickory nuts on top of the frosting. So if I do have little crumbs, that's going to disguise it. You don't want to, you know, I think it's nice not to take yourself or your baking too seriously and just have a good time. Don't get stressed out about it too much. If it's not perfect, it's not perfect, but then people will know it's homemade. And when you're working with your frosting here, and it's a hot summer day out today, if it gets to be too movable, you can pop it in the fridge and let it set up again and cool down, and it can spread a little bit more evenly. And to the top of this, I'm gonna add some hickory nuts. And now you can just sprinkle around, toast them up a bit before you do. So I wanted to add some of Emily's beautiful flowers to decorate the cake with, but I wanted to wait until the very last minute to do that with. That way the flowers stay nice and fresh. I'm gonna go set this to the side, get the cow's milked, and then get into my wedding dress, because a bride should never be late to her own wedding.
I now pronounce you husband and wife. You may kiss the bride.
The perfect ending for the perfect day. Wisconsin-grown hickory nut wedding cake. Top it all off with cream cheese frosting. Keep things local by tossing a sustainably grown flower bouquet.
Well, I hope this has inspired you to fall in love and have a farm wedding. And I hope you gather with us next time. Around the Farm Table! I'm your host, Inga Orth.
Around the Farm Table is funded in part by Wisconsin Farmers Union, Heartland Credit Union, and Friends of Wisconsin Public Television.